Team, welcome and thank you so much for joining us on our third installment tonight. What we're going to be going over is brick number 3, where we build character, we've built identity, and now we have to own it all. A story that you're ashamed of, a story that controls you, a story that owns you and has leverage. That's accountability, and that's what we're building tonight. Let me bring in the panel tonight. We have A-Ray, NIL expert, business strategist. He's watched athletes own their story and win because he himself was an athlete, and he'll get into that a little bit. And he watched athletes make excuses and lose everything. KJ Peoples, also an athlete in his own right, still continuing to work with athletes. Athlete empowerment and professional development. KJ sees the accountability looks like when it's working and what it costs athletes and their team when it isn't. Erin Sarles, co-founder of Blueprint to Blue Chip, the architect of the Caddy framework, which she'll get into tonight. It is an acronym. Accountability over excuses is her pillar. And tonight she's going to name that everyone else is describing, or she's going to share whatever everyone else is describing. Me, I'm your moderator and anchorman. I'm just going to be bringing up the rear here. And let's get into tonight. Let's remember where we are. Brick 1 was character. Brick 2 is identity. Tonight is brick 3. Erin, one question before we build. Tell us a little bit about yourself, ladies first. Then I want to get into A-Ray as well as KJ.
Okay, great. I'll be super quick. Well, hopefully we have a lot of followers that are back here tonight. So I'm Erin. I am number 1 a sports mom. I have 2 competitive athletes that play sports in high school. So I come from this as a mom's angle. And then I spent 20 plus years in corporate America as an executive strategist and consultant. And so I bring all my years of wisdom from coaching inside of corporate America to the athletic space.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Erin. A-Ray, tell us a little bit about you and what brings you to the panel tonight.
Yeah, how you guys doing? I'm a former student athlete, ran track in college. I'm actually out here in sunny Southern California. After graduating undergrad, went to law school. I went to law school because I wanted to help athletes. Being a former athlete, I felt like, why not give back? After law school, I spent, 5-6 years in tax, actually, in mergers and acquisitions. I thought that I had a kind of a unique background and I wanted to, really get involved and help athletes. That's my passion. And so kind of switched directions. And now I'm here, as an NIL consultant and, helping, providing NIL education.
Awesome. I heard murders and acquisition. There you go, athletes. If you don't stick around with A-Ray, he's going to murder you. And I'm just kidding. Mergers
and acquisition.
KJ, tell us about yourself. KJ, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, man, Thomas, you cracked me up, man. Thank you for having me. My name is KJ Peoples. I am from the great state of Texas, the Mecca of football, as I like to say. Other people might want to argue about it, but hey, we're the Mecca of football.
For you.
I was a former collegiate football player, played 5 years. I was blessed enough to have a COVID year. Now I spend my time helping develop athletes, and I also do financial services. I'm really big on financial education, helping people understand the different rules of money and things like that, and how they can just be smart. And I want to take everything that I've, learned from my mentors and research and pour that into athletes, and just change the narrative, and help those guys be successful. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. Team, we're going to be sensitive to your time, and I know our panel has a lot to get onto for the rest of the day with other clients, or the rest of the evening. Erin, let's jump into it. Why does accountability have to come after identity? What can't you own? Why can't you own your story before you know who you are?
I think first and foremost, why identity has to come first before accountability is you have to truly know who you are. You can't own every aspect of that if you don't know who you are, because then you start to make excuses or you sit in shame. And it's not about either of those. It's about just owning what's happening. We're human beings. We're all going to make mistakes, but the more you know who you are and that you can radically own that and accept it, the more you're going to be able to propel yourself forward. And I would say that's for every human being listening, parents, coaches, athletic directors, and athletes alike. It's the your identity is your foundation, but accountability is your ownership, and it keeps you out of shame.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, team, for the panel, I'm really going to ask you guys to expose yourself, open up your kimono a little bit and share with the audience. I want you to tell a story that you're ashamed of, that you felt like it controlled you, and how that story has leverage. Think about it for a minute. We'll start with you, A-Ray.
Yeah, no, that's a good that's a good question. For me, I think something that I'm ashamed of, and something that I actually had to hold myself accountable for, is actually my grades in as I'm competing in undergrad. As a student athlete, I put my sport first over my grades. And being a track athlete, there's, unless you're a Usain Bolt, right? Unless you're a phenomenal track athlete, there's no, real career path after that. And so I focused my time. I always said I majored in track and field. And so with that is, my grades weren't the best. And so as I'm applying to grad school, as I'm applying to law school, I realized, I'm not there. I'm not where I need to be. I have to put in extra work now on this back end so I can make up for the things that I didn't do when I was in, when I was in school. So for me, it took a big toll. I took a very unique path to law school, again, because I didn't put in the time, energy, effort into school and into my schoolwork. And so I had to own that, own up to it. And, fortunately it worked out. I did end up going to law school and all that, but, I was put on the wait list for every single school I applied to. And that was due to the lack of attention and a lack of accountability that I took in undergrad.
Awesome. That's a great share. Thanks so much, Eric. KJ, tell me about a time you had to own something hard, and what did you choose and what did it cost you?
I think I would have to rewind back to my senior year of high school, going into my freshman year. I was really good in high school, and going into my freshman year in college, I was kind of big-headed in the sense of like, man, I'm going to go, I'm going to start, I'm going to play, right? As you guys know, I started out at the Division III level, so I was like, I'm better than this. I was coming out during COVID, which was a crazy time. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go here for a year, play my freshman year, transfer up, right? When I got there, that is not what happened, right? Mm-hmm. So I ended up sitting behind a few guys that were older than me, and I had a poor attitude about it. Like, I was a bad teammate. I was like, man, the coaches are tripping, like, and I stopped showing up the way that I need to show up, right? Like, I'm showing up late to meetings. I'm just like, man, the heck with this. They told me I was going to play, and I'm not playing, right? So I'm mad at everything. I'm mad at everybody. I'm blaming the coaches. And that next season, I kind of had to sit down with myself and realize, like, it had nothing to do with my talent. It had everything to do with how I was showing up and being around my teammates and my coaches. Right. So I kind of had to let my ego and my pride die in a sense and say, hey, look, yeah, I might be like better than this guy, like skill set wise, but he shows up differently than I do. He's watching film. He's, going to recovery. He's going to eat his meals. He's having conversations with his coach and his position coach and things like that, and building relationships. And that was like my first learning experience of like, okay, this is actually what it takes to, be a college athlete and play. So I would say that was a learning experience for me, and my ego and pride had to go out the window because coaches do not care about that.
KJ, that is huge. That's, a common misconception or a common issue with athletes is they believe their own press clippings, right? And then when they show up, they got to remember that the athletes before them are just as good, if not better than you, and you got to earn your spot. Aaron, what about you? Is there a time when you had to own something hard as a parent over your kids and put character over before everything else?
Oh, yes. Oh, many, many times. Like, well, let me think of the most recent. I think one of my big learnings, I can't necessarily pinpoint one situation, but I can think about how I showed up as a parent to their sporting games, probably wanting it more than them, probably being a little overzealous. And I think learning as I've stepped into this process and stepped into this space, like, how do you just step back and allow your child to really drive the bus and to be a support, and to give them encouragement, but to really detach from their performance and the outcome? And so it took a lot of accountability and ownership on my part as a parent to go, you know what, I need to show up differently for my kids. How do I ask them the right questions? How do I stay quiet in the car after a bad game that either one of them have had and they don't want to talk? It's like, just leave it alone, Aaron. It's going to be okay. They'll talk to you at some point again. Just might not in the car for the next 15 minutes. And so I think I can say it takes a lot of accountability to just go, how they are isn't a reflection of you, but how can you show up best for them so they can work through that? And so, yeah, we could be here all day if I shared every story where I screwed up parenting wise, but that's not what this is about.
Yeah. Aaron, let's build on that a little bit. Most athletes hear accountability and think of it as a punishment, but you say accountability doesn't have a but. The but is the excuse. What is accountability and why do athletes get it wrong?
I think for me, accountability and how I define it when we coach and work with athletes is just radical ownership, and radical ownership, not in this sense of judgment, nothing in my world. And as we talk to athletes, it's not about good or bad. It's just, there is an isness. What are you learning from this? And so ownership is just a radical self-acceptance of like, okay, this is what's going on. How do I want to move through that? Not making excuses, not thinking you're good or bad, there's right or wrong. It's just radical acceptance of who you are, who do you want to be, and taking that feedback, because we're going to have moments where we don't make the plays on the field or we don't make the right decisions, and we just have to learn from them, own them, accept them, and move forward. And I think we have a prime example in the news right now where if Brandon Sorsby took radical ownership over his actions and just took full accountability and said, you know what, I made a mistake. I have a problem. I atone for my problem, and I'm going to work on that, and let me demonstrate that to you. I think the situation would look a lot differently than making excuses and, quite honestly, trying to sue everybody. So that's why I say there's no but, there's just an is.
I like it. I like KJ. You have your own company, Proform Elite, and you work with athletes currently right now. What is accountability and why do athletes get it wrong?
I think, like Aaron said, accountability is taking ownership of where you are, right? A lot of kids, when I'm working with them and, let's just say they're a sophomore and they're like, hey, I want to be on varsity. Right. And I'm like, okay, now why are you not on varsity? And their first thing is always something that somebody else did. Oh, the coach, or, my parent, or my height, or like things that they can't control. Right. So I think accountability is taking care of the things you can control and honing in on those, because wherever you are right now, whether you like it or you don't like it, is a sum of the decisions that you've made personally.
True.
Right. Whether there were influence decisions, at the end of the day, you made the decision, right? So I think it's just understanding that nobody really has a say-so in where you are beside yourself. And I think that's what true accountability is, right? Whether that's in private or in public.
No doubt. Aaron, how about from the brand side? Can brands tell the difference between an athlete who owns their own story and one who's just managed their image? I'm sorry, this is for A-Ray.
Yeah. I think brands can tell, just like anyone else, can tell. You can tell when something's authentic. You can tell when someone's doing it for show, when it's fake. And so, you want to show up as your true self. You want to be authentic. And if you're not authentic, if you're not showing up as your true self, you have to have some accountability for that. You have to have, as Aaron and KJ both said, you have to take some ownership of you not showing up, right? Of you dropping, of you actually dropping the ball with that brand deal or with the deliverable or whatever it is, owning in. And a lot of times, brands, they don't, just like people, just like coaches, right? They don't care about excuses. why you didn't get it done, or why you couldn't record that post or do something. It's just, did you do it or did you not? I did it. I didn't do it. Oh, okay. Well, how can, we improve that going forward? If you're open and honest, it helps with the relationship building. Hey, I got caught up. I apologize. I'm going to be better the next time if you give me that opportunity. And so, I think it's important to hold yourself accountable, especially out to these brands, because, they're the ones paying. And if you want some of the money that they're paying, you have to show up and be truthful and be honest and, own your actions.
100%. This next one, A-Ray, I'm going to continue with you, and then KJ, I'm going to follow up with you. 5 pillars, one choice every day: eligibility, business, financial, contract, and social brand. A-Ray, you built this framework. What's the common thread between all 5? Because I think the room needs to hear why these 5 specifically.
Yeah, because I like to tie these into within NIL, right? All these, eligibility, your financial, your business, your contracts, your social, all these tie into NIL in some way, shape, or form, right? Be it contracts, your agency contracts, your NIL deals, your eligibility. Can you play? Can you perform? Are you going to be suspended? Your social brand, right? How are you getting these third-party deals? What is your social media following? What is your social media following look like? What is your platform? Are you showing up? Financial. Are you doing the things necessary to keep the NIL funds that you get? Are you bookkeeping? Are you keeping track of your taxes? Do you have a plan in place, for after you're done with college? And so, all these, play a role, and, within NIL, and you have to hold yourself accountable in each of these areas. And in each of these areas, there are certain things that, you have to hold yourself accountable for. For instance, within eligibility and compliance. Well, that's going to dictate whether or not you can perform on the field. So are you, in it, and we have to hold you as an athlete accountable, because you are, as the athlete, if you don't do certain things, you are the person who gets suspended or who can't play. It's you. It's not the agent. It's not the coach. It's not the teacher. It's not your mom or dad. It's you. So you have to understand that, each one of these categories, it's going to affect you if you don't hold yourself accountable and do the things that you have to do, and it affects your NIL. Gotcha.
KJ, you're kind of a 1-2 punch with being involved in financial service as well as being a sports performance coach. Which one of these 5, eligibility, business, financial, contract, and social brand, do you see athletes avoid most? And what does this avoidance ultimately cost them?
I would say they avoid mainly, it's pretty tough. I would probably say, man, I would lump business and financial together, and then eligibility and compliance.
100%.
And the reason I say that is because a lot of these guys just simply don't want to deal with it. Like, they're like, I just want to focus on going out there, practicing, playing football, and whatever happens, I'll deal with it later, right? Which kind of puts them in a jam when they don't have the right team around them. And the way I look at it is, nowadays athletes, all they are is 1099 entrepreneurs, right? And you are the business, you own the business. And what do good business owners do? They have a team around them to help them make good decisions, right? That don't mean like they micromanage everybody. They just have trusted people that say, hey, these are the things you need to do. They bring it to their attention, and then they make an educated decision, right? So I think that's where they have to shift the mindset of, like, you're not just a football player anymore, right? With all the things that are on the table, like, you're a business owner. Like, you represent your business, whether that's on the field, in public, on social media. Like, there's more eyes on you now than there ever is before, just the way like social media is now, right? Like, we see clips of people on the sideline, their heads down and they're pouting or whatever, and there's just cameras everywhere, right? Like, we've seen it with Odell Beckham. He's kicking the net over, and now he's all over social media. Now everybody's kind of like, bashing his reputation, right? In his head, he's just competitive and mad about the game, but to, everybody else is like, oh, this guy's a cancer to the locker room. He's this, right? So I think they just have to understand where they are truly when it comes to this new era of athletics.
100%. How about this one? Nobody told me versus I should have known, or that's my advisor's they'll handle that, or my name is on the business. Hey, Ray, where do athletes drop the ball on compliance accountability? Because I don't think it's as simple as just knowing the rules.
Yeah, they drop the ball because they think, kind of like out of sight, out of mind. I don't have to think about it. Or, I didn't know. I think you led into it perfectly. I didn't know I had to do this. I didn't know I had to sign those paperwork, those documents. I didn't know that I had to keep up above a 2.0 GPA. I didn't know I had to contribute or I had to disclose to NIL Go. I didn't know that the team had a certain requirement that, everyone do study hall for a certain amount of hours. It's all these, I didn't know. I didn't realize. Well, did you ask questions?
Right.
Did you reach out? Did you, what I'm saying? So are you holding yourself accountable? Especially when you're coming in, you're 17, 18, right? You're young. A lot of times, like I know for me, my mom did a lot of my stuff for me. She helped me sign the documents. Hey, make sure that you're doing this. Hey, make sure that you're doing that. Well, when you're in college, there's no more hand holding. You are accountable for for following the team rules. You are accountable for your GPA. You are accountable for your NIL Go disclosures and any disclosures that need to be had within the school, within NCAA, within NIL Go. Like, you're responsible for those things. And if you're not, your parents aren't getting suspended, right? Your coach isn't getting suspended. It's you. You're getting suspended. You're getting, you're not going to be eligible. You can't play this season. So that is what I would like kids to understand and kids to know, that we're not in high school anymore. We're in college, and you have to hold yourself accountable.
100%. Aaron, mom, nobody told me. Talk to us about through the caddy lens. What does that really mean?
So, number one, we talk about accountability over excuses, and we all can do it. It's that moment in your mind when you can choose, what's my ownership here? Like, this just happened. Does it go to, okay, what did I learn? Or does it go to pointing to all the externalities that I can make an excuse? Well, this person didn't show up. They didn't do this. Nobody told me this. Whatever is going on, rather than going, it's radical ownership. It's going, okay, if I'm signing this contract, yes, I have a team, but it's also making sure that I fully understand it. I will just put it, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask every question that comes into your mind. This is your name on this contract. Again, as Aaron said, not your parents. Yes, your parents should be a great support system, hopefully, to you, but you have to take the ownership and accountability that comes along with the responsibility of wanting to get paid at this level. You can't want this $200,000, $300,000 NIL revenue share deal from your school and not then accept the ownership that comes along with it and to fully understand it. And so that's why we are doing things like this. That's why there's people like Aaron and KJ and Thomas and myself that you can ask all these questions. What are other questions I should ask so that you're empowered to have full ownership of it? And so accountability is that momentary just responsibility. If you're getting into this, you have to take all accountability. And that means you need to do all your diligence, all the hard work to understand this, even with the team around you.
No doubt.
And Aaron, I wanted to kind of piggyback off that point as well. When we're holding ourselves accountable, we have to be accepting of the consequences as well, because as Aaron said, it's your name on that contract. It's your name on that scholarship. It's your name on, you know, whatever document it is that you're signing or, you know, on the team roster. And so if you're not doing the things you have to do, your name can easily be erased and insert somebody else. There are consequences to our actions, and they're different than those consequences were in high school, right? Or, you know, there's consequences, and your parents, they can't take those arrows for you. It's all on you. And so we have to understand that you are seen as an adult. And so we have to act accordingly.
100%. No question about it. This is going to be a question for both A-Ray as well as KJ. KJ, you're going to put on your financial services hat. Walk me through what financial accountability actually look like day to day, not the concept, but in practice. And what I mean by that is I didn't know I owed taxes and I didn't know what I signed. Two of the most expensive sentences in NIL.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start. Something I wanted to kind of add previously is like, you know, a lot of people say the quote or the saying, you know, more money, more problems. And it's not necessarily problems. It's just you have more responsibility, right? You can't. And I think a lot of times athletes choose to be willfully ignorant, right? They're just like, if I don't know, then I can just say I don't know, right? And it's like you can't do that anymore. Like, you know, like a lot is at stake. You can get yourself in some really big trouble. But I think when guys kind of say, you know, I just didn't know, like it's either A, their advisors or whoever's on their team is not working for them, or B, they just simply were just like willfully ignorant, like they just didn't want to know, right? Until it's too late and they're like, oh wait, I actually need to fix this. It's like, no, you should have been proactive, not reactive.
Right.
I think a lot of times that's where they kind of mess up. It's like, no, just stay ahead of things. It's just like in elementary when you're or middle school when you're doing your schoolwork, like you want to stay ahead of the week so you don't get to the end of the week like, oh my God, I gotta try to finish all of my work. Or just like in college, you're writing an essay and it's like 2 a.m. and you're like, oh my God, I gotta finish this essay before I go to class. Like, no, you had this essay for 2 weeks. You should have been done it. So I would say it's just the mindset of being proactive instead of reactive.
I like it. I like it. A-Ray, what about you? Walk me through the financial or the contract accountability and what that actually looks like day to day, not the concept. I didn't know I owed taxes and I didn't know what I signed.
Yeah. I want to also hit on the financial bit as well as the contract bit. I think that when we are, you know, as an athlete, you know, again, as KJ said, you're a 1099 employee or in 1099 independent contractor. You're not a W-2 employee. And so what does that mean? Well, when you sign, you know, that third party NIL deal with, you know, with that shoe brand or with that restaurant, you know, are you not only disclosing it, but are you, you know, once you get that income, once you get those funds, are you, you know, making sure that you are, you know, having your tax set aside? Right. I know we kind of financial people kind of say between 20 and 30%. So anytime you get that deal, making sure that you're setting that aside, making sure you're setting aside any sort of expense, you know, associated with that deal. All right. Your agency fees or, you know, whatever it is. If you're buying equipment, if you're traveling, make sure that you're documenting those things, making sure you're keeping those receipts, making sure you're monitoring your bookkeeping. I know in about a few episodes down the line, I think it's episode 5 or 6, we're supposed to, you know, have a mid-year kind of financial and tax overview. All right, like what do we plan? Like what was our tax plan or our financial plan at the start of the year? Are we on track? Right. And so your date, you know, your week as an athlete, it should look like, are you monitoring? You should be auditing all your deals, all your things to make sure that you're in line, to make sure that you're financially compliant, to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable financially. If you have a budget, making sure you're sticking to that budget. And so, you know, that's what I would say about, you know, what would or shouldn't athletes day to day look like on the financial side. It should look like you're monitoring all your financial stuff. And then as for contracts, I think Aaron said it earlier. Do you know what you're agreeing to? Do you understand the terms of the contract? Most of the time it's no. If you go ask most athletes, hey, what's in your contract? What's the compensation structure? They'll tell you what they're owed, but that's pretty much about it. They don't know the what the termination clause is, or what the actual breakdown of your compensation structure. What does this contract say? And again, that's something that you should know, because if something should happen, if you breach that contract of any like, your agent isn't getting suspended, your agent isn't losing eligibility. It's on you. That athlete's losing that eligibility, or that athlete, won't get paid. And yes, there's, claims that you can have against that agent for, maybe malpractice and all that stuff. But again, it's your reputation that takes a hit. And so when we're thinking about, contracts, and we're making sure you're saving those contract documents in an area where you can reach it, where you can always go back, where you can look to it. Because when you do that, you're going to be holding yourself accountable to that contract, to the words within that contract. If you don't understand the contract, how can you hold yourself accountable to the contract?
Right. No question. Now let's get into social media. About everything you post is permanent. You got to own it. Image breaks under pressure, but character holds. I know now that sometimes I get a little heated and I get a little responsive to political current events, but I've had to remind myself to reel it in. And there's a very popular quote that I remember from Michael Jordan when Obama was running for president. They said, "How come you're not endorsing Obama?" And he said, "Because Republicans buy shoes too." I thought that was awesome. And KJ, we'll start with you. Why do athletes underestimate social and brand accountability? And what's the pattern you see when it goes wrong?
I think what they don't understand is, like, and I kind of talked about this last time, they have to not think about themselves so much.
Right.
Like, yeah, you might want to say something, or you might want to post something because of the way that you're feeling, right? But then there's a domino effect to everything around you that you're connected to, whether that's your teammates, your coaches, your siblings, your parents, your future, right? Your deals. And I think a lot of times they're so short-sighted, and they just like are in the moment and in their feelings that they don't take a second to just, should I post this? Should I post this? Should I say this? And if you have to think about it, you probably shouldn't do it.
There you go.
Right? A lot of times they're in the fence of like, this is kind of on the lines. I don't know if you got to think about it, do not post it. Like, just don't do it. Because it might not bite you in the butt now, but a month later, 2 months later, right? Somebody might have seen it, right? And then now you get into these situations where you said something 5 years ago, and then now somebody's bringing it up like, hey, no, he said this like 5 years, and now you have to try to defend yourself and all these other things. Is like, just don't post it, man. Like, write it in your journal. Write it in your journal, and if you're mad, write it in your journal, and you're like, I got it out. Like, don't put it on social media, man. Like, it's hard.
Because KJ, Aaron, I want to get to you, because KJ, and I want you to build on it, Aaron, is KJ, it's not just what you post, it's on the things you comment on too, right?
Yeah. Comment, repost, reshare, like, whatever. Like, you can, somebody else could post something and you like it or reshare it, and it's like, I didn't post it, but it's like, well, I mean, you engaged in the post, so
there you
like,
go.
What is that saying? Right? And it's just like, you are the company you keep, in person and in social media.
So true. Hey, Ray, build on that.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it right now. I think we're seeing it in the NBA right now with Jaylen Brown, right? The things that you post, the things that you talk about on your live feed, on your Instagram, on your social media, that stays with you. Whether or not it's you really believe that, whether or not that's what you meant or not, or what you didn't mean, whatever it is, it's out there to the public for people to comment on. With the Jaylen Brown situation, I think that's a prime example as to there's a perception about Jaylen Brown. Yes, he's smart and all these things, but he speaks his mind. Well, that deters some, some brands. That deters, some companies who, yeah, I really like that app. I really like this person, but, I don't, necessarily align with all what he says or what they talk about or whatever it is on social media. So I don't want to align myself with, with that person. And that can affect your, what the NIL income that you're getting. Again, if we're seeing it in the NBA, why would we not think that it's going to translate over to college? I think every time the NFL draft comes, we always see the post that happened 3 years ago with this one person said this or the one person said that. And now that's all we're talking about throughout the entire first round. This draft prospect might have dropped 3 slots or dropped out of the first round or the second round because of what they posted 2 years ago on Twitter or X or, or Instagram. And so those things follow you. Those things, it's your reputation. And so, being able to hold yourself accountable, like, hey, yeah, 2 years ago, I said this, that's not, that's who I was 2 years ago. I've changed. I've done this now. That's not what that meant. We're always having to explain. But again, that's what it is when you're posting on social media, and it's not a bad thing. Or I'll say it's not always a bad thing, but it's something that we have to be aware of and be mindful of. And again, it ties back into accountability. We have to hold ourselves accountable for everything that we do and for our actions.
Yep. And just to add on that a little bit, I think that's why it's so important that we started off with identity, like at the very beginning of this series, is because let's just say you're a guy who's very like outspoken. He's going to speak his mind, and that's just the person you are. Like, if that is you, then okay, like be you, right? Like, you just have to know that there's always, like A-Ray said before, there's consequences to everything that you do, right? Like, we see it all the time, right? Like, I can relate it to like Mendoza, right? I'm a Raiders fan. I'm like, man, like this guy's just like too nice. Like, he's just like, I want a guy that's like a little bit more gritty, right? And then like he starts, these interviews, and he was talking about like how he really is gritty, but it's the perception he has to have because he represents an organization and things like that. I'm like, okay, like it makes sense. And that's like a prime example of, just understanding what you're representing and that you can be you, but you have to know what's attached to you at the same time. And I think that's important. It just goes back to who you are as a person, what is your identity, and then be accountable to it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I think to kind of just continuously going on about social media and and being accountable, and I think maybe that's why some of these athletes, stay off social media a lot of times, because they don't want to say anything or do things that has backlash, right? We know Kevin Durant and his possible burner account, and when that leaked, all what kind of happened with his teammates, right? And and then during all the interviews, it wasn't any accountability. Oh yeah, that's my burner account. I apologize to all those things. It was it was the lack of accountability that kind of festers, right? And so a lot of times it's easier for athletes to just be off social media because I don't want to say anything, then I have to own up to it, and now we're in this big drama-filled thing, and it's like, that is understandable. But again, within NIL, you almost need and you almost want to have a social media presence. And so again, it goes back to what we, how we started, knowing your identity, having a strong identity, being authentic to that identity, and holding yourself accountable.
True. Mom, integrity over image. Build a brand that is your character, not a performance. What does that actually mean for an athlete building their NIL brand?
Well, I think it's kind of echoes a lot of what they really said. I mean, first and foremost, social media can't be a performance. Social media should be a reflection of who you are and the best of who you are. So we all have flaws in our character. That's probably not what we want to be putting out into the world. There's a way to probably own some of those aspects of, who you are and how you're growing. But I think at the end of the day, you don't want a curated version of yourself. You want people to really understand who you are that reflects you. And I think that also gives you a lot more leverage within brands because you have authenticity. Your brand is your character. And when you're grounded in that and in your integrity, regardless of what comes, you're going to be able to manage that. If there's something that's less than stellar that comes to light, both of the example, Kevin Durant's example, you take full ownership of it, and you own it. And this is who I am. And, I take responsibility for that. And let me just tell you, I really screwed up here. And let me tell you why I screwed up here, and I shouldn't have been doing that. So I think our culture needs, I think as parents, and then I think in all spaces, is just radical ownership and acceptance. And we've got to stop making excuses. Right. It just is what it is. And I think people are forgiving if you can atone, like you can reflect and say, what, this is wrong and this is why it's wrong. And here's what I'm doing about it. And you're like, okay, this person owns it.
Awesome. As we close out, I'm going to go to the panel. A-Ray, I'm going to start with you. So brick 1, we built character. Brick 2, we built identity. Brick 3 is character. How does somebody build character?
I think,
I'm sorry, A-Ray. I'm sorry, not character, accountability. How do they build accountability?
Yeah, I think accountability, it starts by self-reflection and understanding, understanding your identity and how your actions kind of veered from that. Or if that actually might be, your actions might be a part of your identity. And it's like, okay, well, do I like that? Is this a positive, identity that I want to display? Right. But I think it really comes with self-reflection. And, there's this saying that, I was taught when I was in undergrad, and it's something that I always use is excuses are for the incompetent. And, we don't want to use excuses because, when we're using excuses, we're not getting better. We're not improving. We're just, we're just talking about how we continuously, come up short, or how we're continuously failing. And so, accountability is, we really want to self-reflect, look at, where we went wrong in our actions, and try and help and try and build on that in a positive way.
Got it. KJ, same question for you. How do we build accountability?
I think you build accountability through your daily self-leadership actions, right? Like you have to be able to hold yourself accountable to small things, right? Like if you're going to wake up at 7 a.m. every single day, like do that, right? And I think it's just setting those little daily tasks, 2 or 3 tasks. Like today, I'm going to wake up at 7, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to make sure I drink a gallon of water. Like do those 3 things consistently over and over and over and over, and become accountable to yourself. Because if you can't be accountable to yourself, there's no way you could be accountable to a team, to an organization, to your parents. Like it all starts with yourself. So I think just building daily habits is a good way to just practice, developing accountability.
Got it. Aaron, Mom, what does accountability over excuses mean to you?
I think just radical self-ownership, radical ownership over yourself. And I would just really, I think the thing where most people have a hard time getting that right is suspension of judgment, is the suspension of shame, like just acceptance. It's just, there's an isness to it. It's remove the good or bad, right or wrong, any of that. Just, okay, this is what's going on. What did I learn? What could I do differently so that you don't keep repeating the mistake? When you make excuses, the chances of you doing the same thing over and over again is really highly likely because you're not taking ownership of it in wanting to change that. And so just accept it, just learn from it, just going, this moment is here to teach me to grow. What would I do differently in this moment? Not it's the ref's fault, it's my mom's fault, it's this fault. It's okay, what did I learn from that? What can I do differently? You're not a bad person for inquiring, and you're not a bad person for making the mistake.
No question at all. Hey, Ray, where can people get a hold of you?
People can find me on LinkedIn, Aaron Ray, JDLLM. You can also find me on Instagram at The Law Father, or you can go to the QR code that is going to be my website, 2percentconsulting.com. That's 2percentconsulting.com.
Awesome. KJ, where can people find you, whether it's a website, social media, or email?
They can find me on Instagram at KJ Peoples Official. And from there, you can find me on everywhere else. Or you can just scan the QR code. It'll take you right to my link tree, and you can connect with me wherever you need to.
Awesome. Aaron, Mom, where can people get a hold of you or get a hold of us at Blueprint?
Well, first scan that QR code on the screen, but blueprintbluechip.com, or you can find Aaron Sarles or Thomas Rowe on LinkedIn, social media platforms. We're here to support and help in any way we can. So thank you for joining us. We're so excited for this series.
Awesome. Team, own it or run from it. That's the test every time. The athlete who owns it is the one that lasts the most. Everything this panel has described tonight, that's not just a conversation, that's the framework. Aaron, tell them.
What am I telling them?
Blueprint to Blue Chip is the framework. Character over clout, accountability over excuses, discipline over motivation, and integrity over image. These are the pillars of our foundation. And team, we're going to get into it next week, again with the same panel as we've gone through all of these pillars tonight. We've talked about brick 1 was character, then we got into identity, and now we have accountability, and we'll see you next week. There's the QR code. We will leave the contact information in the show notes, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Hey, Ray, KJ, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.